We've been doing this since 2010. General Myatt gave me a phone call and asked me to come to lunch and made me a volunteer for San Francisco Fleet Week. And we talked about using the military assets that were coming in for Fleet Week for the great celebrations, putting them to work with civilian authorities on joint military-civilian disaster response missions, doing some training and education. We started with a senior leader seminar, turning the hangar deck of the USS Macon Island into a conference center and having some noted speakers work through what are the issues that come up for disaster response in a domestic situation.
But I think a lot of people don't understand the piece that we do in support of civil authorities. So it really is an honor for us to be here and to better understand how we can all work together better.
This Senior Leaders Conference that prepares us for defense support to civil authorities, it's a great time to both demonstrate to the citizens of the San Francisco area what they've got in terms of their military and their sea services, and to show respect and honor the tremendous women and men that serve in the armed forces.
If you're an enemy of our nation, the worst day of your life is when the Department of Defense shows up on the horizon. Likewise, if you're a citizen of our nation and you're a partner or ally of our nation, the best day of your life is when the Department of Defense shows up on the horizon to provide relief as only they can.
I've had the privilege, as it's Admiral Tyson, I know, to take a lot of people aboard U.S. naval ships with Marines embarked, and I just have to tell you, their jaws usually drop to the floor when they see what we can do from the sea across, again, a range of capabilities, mission sets, and responses. So niche or unique capability or a need for greater capacity gets us in business.
I think there's a lot to learn, and there's a lot to impart to others also, because the experiences we had with the earthquake in Nepal, specifically the medical aspect, I think there's a lot of issues and challenges we faced, and I feel that similar challenges may take place in other countries where such a disaster can occur. So the informations that we have learned can be shared by others so that we can mitigate the mistakes that we made.
अब त्यो सबै माथिदेखि भत्किएर पुरेपछि कतिजना मान्छे मर्यो त्यो मलाई थाहा भएन। म आफूले पञ्चाइ गर्न अब निस्किन सफल भयो, तर यो आँखा एउटा यस्तो भयो, यसको लागि सहयोग गर्नुपर्ने मान्छे साथीहरू यहाँ भइदिएन, त्यो कसले गर्दिन होला।
At this time, I would like to thank the US military, the US government for supporting us, for helping us specifically in the preparedness program. We had tabletop exercises, especially on the medical aspect, search and rescue, casualty evacuations, and first responders, a couple of times with the US military. And I would like to say this helped save many lives. The other thing I noticed during this earthquake is preparedness, communication, coordination, and cooperation. During times of a massive disaster, there will be plenty of helping hands. During the recent earthquake which occurred in Nepal, we immediately had almost 14 medical teams come immediately within 36 to 48 hours. And almost 4,000 military personnel come over for search and rescue and engineering part. In a matter of a week, we had more than 100 medical teams that were coming in. And in fact, there were many medical teams, civil medical teams that were wanting to come in. We had to put a full stop because it was being overloaded. I think we did make a good decision, but choosing the medical teams and choosing the teams which come into the country is very important, because not all of them had good capabilities or proper capabilities. And specifically towards the end, there were a lot of good teams, especially with orthopedics, reconstruction part, neurosurgery team, which we really required, which were wanting to come in, but the government had already put a full stop for all medical teams coming in because it was getting overloaded out there. The other part is communication. Communication acts as a lifeline during time of disaster. Most of the communication was totally knocked out. The electricity was knocked out for almost 4 days. The mobile system, though working, because the traffic volume was very, very high, a lot of people were contacting their loved ones, and that was the reason why people were not able to communicate and find out where exactly the need for casualty evacuation, for relief materials to go in, for rescue operations to go in. It was difficult to access. The social media, I would say, specifically the Facebook, the Twitters, they did a wonderful job. We were getting information through the Facebook that in so and so places there were people who needed to be evacuated or who needed relief materials. And in many a places, I would say that it was in those areas that we started sending relief materials. And the other part is definitely cooperation and coordination. The cooperation and the coordination within the security personnel, that is the military, the police, it was very, very smooth. But again, between the civil part, between the various different international organizations that came in, again the communication was lacking. And because of this, we are not able to find out, there's a lot of duplication occurring. We are not able to find out what exactly was required where, and people were going on their own to different areas, and at places we used to find 4 or 5 medical teams doing nothing out there. So information plays a very important role. Cooperation and coordination is equally important.
We're delighted today to have a panel that is able to provide different perspectives on the response to the Nepal earthquake.
You can imagine the most complex terrain, most challenging weather conditions and greatest extended lines of operation that you could operate on, that's Nepal, and that's what we were faced with. Now, we didn't go into this blind. As General Rana had indicated, we had been working with the Nepal Army doing numerous tabletop exercises. 2 things that I would add to General Rana's 3 C's to make it 5 C's is collaboration and consideration. You really have to have a cultural consideration of your response and be mindful not to help so much that it hurts. Only deploy what is required and do not stay a minute longer than needed. Those are the 3 MEF and 3rd MED mantras to humanitarian assistance, disaster relief. And the last 2 are connected because what you don't want to become is a burden, or you don't want to tax an already taxed infrastructure.
USAID, or the Office of Foreign Disaster Assistance, was created and very shortly thereafter placed within the Agency for International Development. And our role is to be the federal lead for this in support of the ambassador or diplomatic lead in country, and obviously in support of the host government. And so what that means as far as an interagency coordination is we are the supported element at all points. And assistance that comes in is in support of us. Our mission, next slide, is threefold, and it's pretty straightforward. Save lives, alleviate suffering, and mitigate the economic and social impact of a disaster. For military planners, I like to say this is our in order to statement. So we fund NGOs in order to save lives. We deploy search and rescue teams in order to mitigate human suffering. We don't save lives in order to necessarily further another goal. Understanding the process, understanding the system is going to be much more important than knowing the specific earthquake plan. Relationships matter, and knowing roles and responsibilities ahead of time is the best kind of planning that can be done to be able to be synchronized in a disaster response.
So when a disaster is declared and when there is support requested, as was mentioned earlier, the Red Cross network comes into play. Our main focuses, of course, are responding to loss of lives or trauma, or providing assistance when it can't be provided on its own. That assistance tends to look like things you would expect: shelter, clothing, water, sanitation, health, these kinds of activities. The Red Cross movement, broadly speaking, wants to respond as rapidly as possible. I think General Rana mentioned The people who were the first responders, in addition or beyond what would be the equivalent of firemen and policemen or military, are the people who are affected by a disaster. And I think that that piece of it is often overlooked and is incredibly important. And I think that the more that we know about each other and engage and understand different realities in which we work, in which for the Red Cross, it might come to a surprise for you that using military assets in any environment is the option of last resort for us because of perceptions of neutrality, independence.
We started a Facebook account. We also started a website called Resource Nepal. And at the back end, we actually were using Google Documents that could be shared here and also in Nepal. So we were actually scouring the internet and putting in where the needs were. So it was pretty rapid. And then we had volunteers next day who were here trying to manage those Google Documents. And in the evening, we had a lot of volunteers locally and also nationally. We were actually calling people in Nepal and trying to verify the needs. And at the same time, we were calling resources or people who said they had resources and trying to combine it all together. It would be incredible if the armed forces could use the resources that is already here, and we talked about communication. We also talked about consideration, and I think because we know the culture and we're here, if there is a system to utilize some of the local diaspora that is represented in the United States, it would be advantageous to all of us.
It's I'd say a rewarding mission, but it's also a frustrating mission because at the end of the day, you leave before the story is completely written.
We have an interest in maintaining global health alliances and in maintaining a strategic interest in nations around the world.
So clearly, from a force health protection point of view, we have to be actively involved in global health. The second piece, and I think it was quite evident in the Nepal example, is building partner capacity is clearly incredibly important, and having a healthy partner makes it a more valuable partner, and it helps build self-reliance so for the smaller events, less need to actually respond because they're going to be able to respond themselves. We've actually seen that in the development in countries like Bangladesh and others.
There's a fine line between success. You can say, I'm successful because I'm pushing all this stuff in, but if you fail to see that you're causing failure on the side that's receiving, then you're not really successful. You feel good because you're doing a lot and you're pushing things in, so you must be doing a good job. But when people have to be pulled off a pile to become logisticians to really accept all of the commodities, are we really doing good? And that's the message that I wanted to give today, because this is a great group of people, but you have commodities that you want to bring in and we all want to do a great job, but you need to think about the downrange effect of what you're doing uprange. So the commodities that we bring as HHS ASPR are vast. We have disaster medical assistance teams. We have international medical and surgical teams. We have mortuary affair teams that we work in lockstep with FEMA and DOD to design mass fatality plans for the nation.
So my role is as the EMS agency medical director. I do some clinical care work at San Francisco General in the emergency department, but then I'm also responsible for the medical oversight of our first responders, our paramedics, our dispatchers. And then I work as the medical health operations area coordinator in time of disaster. Think of it as kind of a funnel for medical resources going in and out of our city, helping others, but also in time of distress or disaster, requesting those resources. I want to just highlight that we do the communication, both the coordination long-term, such as developing our air medical access. We have more than that. We have 22 designated landing zones in the city that we've developed for time of disaster air medical access. An example of a problem that we've worked on as a community to overcome our limitations and make more robust. And then in immediate communications, we have an internet-based communication system called ReadyNet that we can communicate with all of our pre-hospital providers and our hospital providers to provide that more more robust immediate communication on top of course, radios and cell phones if they're still operating. In our ambulance system, we have about 150 permanent ambulances. Every one of those ambulances, including our routine interfacility transfer ambulances, carries a multi-casualty incident kit capable of treating 50 patients. And we thought, this would be a potential need, never realized how critical it was until we had our Asiana air crash, where the first unit at the fuselage was a routine interfacility unit with 2 EMTs on board, and they immediately took out their kit and started triaging and treating patients.
Our job as leaders is to create an environment where we can make sure that their heroic efforts at that person-to-person intersection has all the support and backstop and safety catches that it can, and that we facilitate, and that they can perform their heroism with our help as opposed to in spite of us. So it's these kinds of conversations, I think, that go a long way towards making a difference for that young man or woman who doesn't know that they're going to have calamity hit them, but when it does, we'll be as ready as possible.